Are you tired, bored, or uninspired? Frequently, people avoid the work. And they give these reasons of, I'm exhausted, I'm struggling, just don't feel like it, all these kinds of things. And I've had this, plight with this before, that most of the time you give your feelings way too much authority on the choices you make. Because, well, let's be realistic here. If we were given the option, we are always going to choose the easiest way. We're going to choose the simplest and most fun and thing that feels good in the moment. Like, why wouldn't you? If we purely run on the emotions and the choices we have in the moment, why wouldn't we do that? Like, I look at sometimes with children and people are like, they're a bratty child because, they take advantage of the parents and do this kind of stuff. And I was like, of course they fucking do. That's not a fault on the child. That's a fault on parenting. Because even as adults, if we're given the option to get everything we fucking want, why wouldn't we? Like, if you could, hypothetically, have the best physique, have all the money in the world, a perfect relationship, live your life on your terms, doing whatever you wanted, without effort, without anything, wouldn't you? Like, of course you would. If you didn't have to do anything to have everything you wanted, why wouldn't you do it? And this is the thing with our feelings and our emotions, that we allow them to dictate the choices we make. Because, well, I don't feel like it today. I'm tired, I'm bored, I'm, frustrated, didn't sleep well, don't feel like doing that today. Well, the answer is if you only ever do things when you felt like it, the chances of you ever doing anything of value or note is basically next to none. Because, well, you might, let's be generous here and say that 1 out of 3 days you feel like doing the work. 1 out of 3 days you're like, yeah, I slept great, I have lots of energy, I'm feeling motivated as fuck today. And you do the work. By the time you get round to having another motivated day, all the momentum that you've built has disappeared. That's why I talk about, discipline is freedom. Because when you instill extreme discipline, when you put it in that you just do this every day, it removes the thought process. It removes the notions that you have to think about it. Because there is no thought process then. It just is. You don't have to question whether you feel like it today. You don't have to question if you have the motivation. You don't have to question if you've got the energy or the focus or whatever it is to do it today. You just do. Because, well, that's what you decided. And I think it's one of the most powerful things. This comes back to what I was talking about the other day. It's not easy, but it's simple as fuck. You made the decision when the motivation was high. Therefore, the decision is made. There is no more thought process, there is no more questioning, there is no more wondering, there just is. But quite frequently, I think we come up against these roadblocks. And the question is, are you bored? Are you frustrated? Or are you stuck on autopilot? And for most people, I think they're stuck on autopilot. The reason why you struggle is because you've built in these habits that you don't even think about. You don't even remember making the decision to instill that habit into you. It just is your life. It just is what you do. And that's why most people will never break out of it. That's why the first phase, let me clarify on that, the first phase of demanding greatness, they're built into 126 days, and it's 126 days with no exception, with no days off, with no misses, with no anything, just showing the fuck up and doing the work. And the reason why it's 126 days is because it takes 126 days to break a negative habit with a positive habit. It's going to take you 126 days without a miss to rewrite that autopilot. Like, I don't think about my workouts. I don't think about my weighted walks. I don't think about the foods that I eat because I've just ingrained it into who I am. Yet, if I let the habits start forming back up again, it's so easy to slip back into old habits. That's why you must be on top of it. You must stay the course. Because most of the time I find that your feelings are there because you're on autopilot. You do the same thing over and over and over again. You drive the same way home. When you show up at home, you do the same things. You have these internal triggers that go, well, I have done X, Y, and Z. Now this happens. The best example I have on this one is, so I've done a lot of fasting in my life. I think fasting is a very effective tool for discipline, for resetting, for fat loss, for all those kinds of things. And I've done, 24, 48 hours, all the way up to 7-day fasts. The hardest part of the fast is not the not eating. It's the habitual level. So the bits that I always struggled with the most was when I come home from work, when I normally eat. So you have this moment where there's these internal triggers. I have done X, Y, and Z. I am now home, and now I'm going to go eat. So that's what my body says is going to happen. I have these triggers, and I'm like, I'm starving now. I'm not actually. There's just these internal cues that have been triggered. And I think that's why most people fail. Because they have these internal cues to, well, I reach this feeling, therefore I stop working. I've reached this point and now I snack. I'm tired and exhausted, and so I'm going to go to the kitchen at 10 o'clock at night and raid the pantry and eat absolutely fucking everything inside. There are all these things of how you go through it. And I think you need to become conscious of, well, A, your autopilot, and B, where those feelings are derived from. Are those feelings derived from actual things? Like, are you actually exhausted? Because most of the time, myself included, when I'm like, man, I am absolutely exhausted, it's not true. I'm just a little bit tired. Most of us have never done enough effort and worked and been sleep deprived to actually reach true exhaustion. It's like most people have never actually been hungry. They've never actually reached a point where they're like, fuck me, I'm hungry. They just think they're hungry. That's why when I've introduced people to fasting, they realize that all those cues to eat were just, as I said, autopilot, habitual, no thought process, just going round and round in circles. So you have to start analyzing and be conscious of the choices that you make. Be conscious of the things that you're doing. Be conscious of where you are and what's going on. Most of your life, the thoughts, the things we do, the choices we make are unconscious. And you don't even realize it. And you're kicking into your autopilot and your base needs. But they're not even needs, they're desires. And as I said, if you could have everything you wanted and you just had to do it on it was easy, it didn't require effort, it didn't require any of those things, of course you'd do it. But I think part of it's also that you need to shift your paradigm. And I've spoken about this before, and I think it's A, the autopilot, and B, how people view things. If you show up to the gym every day and go, I fucking hate this, how long are you going to be able to override that? How long are you going to be able to, squash down that and go, well, I fucking hate doing this, but I'm still going to show up every day and do it. You might not enjoy it, but shift how you word it to yourself. Shift the terminology that you use. Shift how you show the fuck up during those times. Because those moments will matter. Those thought processes and choices matter. Change how you phrase it. And change the autopilot. If it's a struggle every morning because You roll out of bed and you get on your phone and you get on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever the fuck it is, and you start your day off on the wrong foot, and then you're tired and you're already seeking dopamine and all these kinds of things. Change those autopilots. Change the cues that set you up. There's a great book called Atomic Habits, and he talks deeply about the cues that set us up for our habits. And if you change the cues and how you set that up, suddenly things become easier. So if you break the cues that set that up, you can build out habits simpler. As I said, that's why in the Demanding Greatness it's every single day. Reason being, because when you make it every single day, the cues are there. You're never breaking the habit. You're never breaking the momentum. You are establishing that this is just who you are and this is what gets done, no matter what. And that's where the simplicity of it comes from. You build it into autopilot because you don't have to think about it. Whereas if you give yourself options, you are going to kick back into your autopilot. You're going to kick back into your easiest way. You're going to kick back into what's comfortable instead of just doing what is necessary every single day. So I think you need to start analyzing where you are. You need to start analyzing what you're doing. You need to start analyzing how you're addressing these situations and the work that you're doing associated with it. When you start to peel back the onion and look at your choices, you'll realize how many choices you didn't even think about making and how many of those choices were the wrong choices. This is the start of changing everything. It's the awareness of the patterns that you have. And from there you can start adjusting them. But it starts with that initial one, when motivation is high, to demand greatness of yourself and do the work that will have the flow-on effect from there. So the question becomes, are you ready to start demanding greatness?